Alright, so this is a very quick update. I wanted to talk a little bit about kind of the sanding technique that I use for a lot of my tabletops and some of the different tools I'm using. I just got a couple of new sanders. And this is kind of an area that I think there's a lot of stuff in auto body and the tools that people will use in auto body that I think are a lot better than what woodworkers are using a lot of times. I know there's some kind of cool sanders out there from Festool and different things like that in terms of dust collection. But in terms of like hand sanding, and I really like pneumatic sanders and pneumatic DAs like you would use in auto body. So I want to show a little bit about that and just kind of show some options, and hopefully it's helpful for some people. So I'll kind of take this in two stages. A lot of my surface prep is with a card scraper, and then I'll run through a couple of different sanding steps with DAs, and then I'll do some hand sanding. But these have been the DAs that I'm using, and I kind of look at this as this is a little bit heavier duty, and then this is more of the finishing DA. In particular, this one is, and I bought this maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and I dropped it, and it kept working and it just died on me actually like yesterday. But I really like this sander. It's model 311 Ingersoll Rand, and I would actually buy another one of these on eBay. I like the whole setup, I like the handle, I like the weight of it, and I'll use it for a lot of stuff like sanding this bark off of the edge for what I can't get with a draw knife. A lot of this will come off with the draw knife still, but then it gives it a really nice finish, and this has been a very good sander. So it's not that expensive. I would highly recommend this if you have an air compressor that can run it and you're doing woodworking. I think that's a pretty good option. I like this a lot more than the electric sanders, like the electric DeWalt sander. I have one of those. I have a Makita electric orbital sander, and I don't like either one of those compared to this. This is an IR finishing, more of a finishing sander, finishing DA. It's called a random orbital sander. It's 4151, and I've never liked this sander. I got it hoping that I'd run some finer grit on it. I got it because it has the palm control. It's supposed to have a vacuum hookup that I've never really used, and it's supposed to be pretty light. Turns out I don't really like how light it is. I find it's I like having a little more weight to the sander, because then I can just let the sander kind of ride across the surface with the grain. And anyway, once that other sander broke, I was like, oh, I'll just get by with this, and then I'll hand sand, and I kind of hate this sander, so I guess I wouldn't recommend this one. It does its job, but I never liked it. So what I decided to do is, after my heavy duty sander broke, I decided to invest in some sanders that will hopefully last me a long time. I bought 2 different Hutchins sanders. This is the heavier duty model. This is more of the finishing sander. The red one here is 4560, and then the finishing one, if I remember this right, is the 4500 is the part number. And I haven't used these a ton yet, but just the feel of them, I like the weight, I like the look, I like that they're made in the US, and I'm pretty excited to have these. It was a little painful buying them, but hopefully these will last me a very long time, and I think they're a great option for finishing tabletops for woodworking. Using a DA, getting a big air compressor, allows you to do the spray finishes. I think a lot of woodworkers are hesitant to get a big air compressor, but it opens up a whole bunch of tools from different trades, and I think it's worth the investment. Even if you had a 60-gallon compressor, it'd be a big improvement, I think, for a lot of woodworkers, versus trying to buy specialty spray turbine systems and electric sanders and things like that. For what a Festool sanders cost, I think the Festool sander is more expensive than both of these 2 DAs combined. So even when you factor in buying an air compressor, then I don't know. I think it works out. I think it's a really good option. But the other thing I've noticed from woodworkers, as I've gotten more into it, is that a lot of their hand sanding is they're not utilizing the tools from auto body. So these are the 3 most common blocks that I use. This is Motor Guard. These are Durablock. You can buy these Durablock hand sanding kits, a set of them, for not very expensive, and I have a number of different sizes. But typically what I'll do is I'll sand with the DAs and get it as flat as I can, and then I'll come back and I'll mark the table up with pencil lines, and that's my guide coat. And then when I hand block it, first with, well, depending on the size of the table, I'll vary on which block I use, but the pencil lines will show me the highs and lows, and then I'll probably do that, usually like 3 times with a different grit, usually with 320 prior to finishing. And then in between, so this is a 3M sanding block, this is a Durablock, and then this is made by Motor Guard, it's called a soft block, and I will use this in between coats of finish. So this is what I'll put, I'll put a DA pad for 600 is typically what I use, and I got a really good deal on this box. Sometimes you find people that buy on eBay, you'll have people that'll buy the wrong kind of sandpaper, so they'll buy like hook it instead of stick it for 3M system, and I think that's what happened on this one. I think I bought this off of eBay because the guy couldn't return it any longer, and he had bought the wrong kind of sandpaper. But anyway, I buy these for 600, and I'll just wrap one of these around the block, and that's what I sand in between coats. So, and then one final thing, I use a couple of different grits, very, very fine grits like what you use for wet sanding, to finish out the poly or finish out the whatever finish I have on the tabletop. Typically I keep 2,000 and 3,000 on hand, and I won't wet sand it, I'll just use it dry, and I'll use a lot of this paper because it'll get clogged with the finish, and as soon as it gets clogged with the finish, I will throw the piece away. And I don't have to use that many of these, but it's completely worth it to get out dust nibs. And depending on how fine I want to buff it, I will jump up to 3,000 occasionally. Usually this 3,000 is used for more of like if you have a piece of trash buried in your finish, and you don't want to get too aggressive around that area and you just want to touch it up, this will work, but it doesn't work very fast. So anyway, that's what I use to buff out the trash on the finish. So hopefully that's helpful for some people out there that are doing woodworking or building furniture and haven't done some of the auto body stuff. And I think that's all, other than the shop is now AC, which is awesome. The whole shop is mostly 80 degrees, but it stays around 70 right around the AC. So that's helping me keep the humidity down and not be dying out here. So that's kind of nice. So anyway, with that, thanks very much for watching.